Have you ever looked in the mirror and just felt like your hair has stopped growing? You know, it hits a certain length and just refuses to budge another inch? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that exact mystery, and the answer is way more interesting than you think.
So let's get right to it. What is the absolute physical limit for human hair? I mean, is there some kind of universal cap on it, or is it totally different for every single person?
And, on a more personal level, why does it seem like some people can grow hair down to their ankles like it's no big deal, while yours hits a wall right at your shoulders? It turns out the answer isn't in some magic shampoo, it's literally written into your biology.
Okay, so to understand the limit, we have to look at the engine of hair growth itself, the hair follicle. Every single one of the, 100,000 or so follicles on your scalp is operating on its own secret internal schedule. It's like a tiny biological clock.
Now, here's what's so wild. Out of this whole cycle, there's one phase that rules them all. It's called the Anagen phase. You can just think of it as the on switch for growing your hair. And pretty much the entire game comes down to one single thing: how long that switch stays on.
So let's break down that full cycle. It all kicks off with Anagen, that super important growth phase we just mentioned, which can last anywhere from 2 to a whopping 7 years. After that, the follicle takes a quick break. It enters the catagen phase for a few weeks where it shrinks up. And finally, it hits the telogen phase, which is a resting period for a few months before that old hair is finally shed and a brand new one starts the cycle all over again. And get this, every hair on your head is in one of these 3 phases right now.
So the big question is, what decides if you're a 2-year growth phase person or 7-year one? Well, as it so often does, the answer is in your DNA.
That's right. Your personal genetic code literally pre-programs how long your anagen phase will be. It's a trait you inherit, which is exactly why the ability to grow ridiculously long hair tends to run in families. You are literally born with your limit already set.
Now here's a really fascinating constant in all of this. While the time your hair spends growing can be totally different from person to person, the speed of that growth is surprisingly consistent for almost everyone. We're talking about ½ an inch per month, which works out to a pretty steady 6 inches a year.
And this is where the math gets really cool. If your genes gave you a shorter 2-year anagen phase, your hair's maximum theoretical length is about 1 foot. That's it. But if you're one of the lucky ones with a 7-year phase, you're looking at a potential of 3.5 feet of hair. And the world record holders, well, their anagen phase is just completely off the charts.
Speaking of off the charts, meet Shay Cuping. Her hair was officially measured at over 18 feet long. Just try to picture that. For her to do that, her hair follicles had to stay in the anagen, that active growth phase, for more than 30 years straight. That is the absolute peak of what human genetics can do.
But hold on. If that's the potential, why aren't more of us walking around with hair that long? Well, it's because there's a powerful enemy that stops our hair from ever reaching that genetic finish line, and its name is breakage. This right here is the central conflict of the whole story. On one side, you've got your genes, which set this beautiful, theoretical goal for your hair. But on the other side, you've got reality, years of sun, styling, and just plain old friction, which imposes a much harsher, practical limit.
I mean, think about it this way. The very tip of a single strand of hair that's 3 feet long is basically a 6-year-old antique. It has survived thousands of days of brushing, washing, heat, and all kinds of environmental damage, so it's no wonder it's incredibly fragile.
So how do you fight back against this barrier? Well, it all comes down to preservation. You can help your hair get closer to its potential by cutting back on heat and chemicals, being gentle when you brush it, and reinforcing it with things like protein treatments. And it sounds kind of weird, but getting regular tiny trims is actually key to stopping split ends before they can travel up the hair and cause more damage. The goal is simple. You have to make sure your hair is growing faster than it's breaking off.
So all of this brings us to a really fascinating final question. What if we could change the rules? What if science could actually let us rewrite our genetic limits? Believe it or not, scientists are already working on this. They're studying the body's internal messaging systems, like something called the WNT signaling pathway, to see if they can basically send a signal to the follicles that just says, hey, keep growing. Imagine personalized treatments that can convince your growth phase to last just a bit longer, pushing right past your natural genetic ceiling. And then, from the other angle, imagine hair products that use nanotechnology to repair strands from the inside out, creating a hair shaft that's almost unbreakable. That would basically demolish the breakage barrier, letting our hair finally reach its true, full genetic potential.
So that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We've seen that your hair's length is a story written by your genes, but it's constantly being edited by the life it lives. If you had a button you could press, a safe way to tell your body to ignore its genetic programming and just let your hair grow and grow, would you do it? What would that even look like? Definitely something to chew on.